DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. I'm glad you joined me today. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson, and today we're going to talk about something that we see in cattle all the time, and sometimes we don't take the time to explain what's happening. It's called bloat. We're going to discuss bloat, different strategies, why it happens, how to treat it, how to prevent it. Thanks for joining me. More after these messages.
As dependable as the sunrise, in dairy parlors, open pastures, on ranches and feed yards across America, a place where reputation is more than a name, where the science of healthier animals is a way of life. It's the responsibility that drives who we are and what we do. Every decision, every day. It's your livelihood and our responsibility.
Closed captioning brought to you by VetGun with Amel and new AMA Abamectin Vet Caps, the 1-2 punch against hornfly resistance from AgriLabs.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here from the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University, where I serve as the Jones Professor of Production Medicine and Epidemiology. And today we're going to talk about something that is a cattle disease or syndrome that is associated with nutrition, and really what we're talking about is bloat. And when we talk about bloat in cattle, there are two types of bloat that we're going to discuss. One is the frothy bloat, and two is free gas. And so they're both kind of self-explanatory when you start to think about it. When I think about frothy bloat, it is cattle that are on legumes or cattle that are on wheat pasture. And what happens is, in that rumen, when we get the intake of these lush forages that are high in proteins, high in tannins, we can get a froth that is built up. And whether it's a foam or a froth from the interaction of the microbes in the rumen with the tannins in these rich legumes or this in rich wheat pasture, we'll get this frothy bloat. And when you tube a calf, or if you puncture a calf in the rumen, you'll see the froth just keep coming out. The other type of bloat is called a free gas bloat, and this is due to increased production of gas whenever we have the rumen microbes and this is more common in a feedlot situation or more common in a calf that's on a grain diet. What'll happen is that we'll get a bout of acidosis or decreased pH of that rumen. When that happens, sometimes the animal's contractions in the rumen or the ability of that animal to burp or eructate gas out of the rumen is the sensors or the stretch receptors in that rumen don't work quite right. And so when those don't work, that animal's not able to belch or eructate and give off that gas, so we get a bloated situation. Now, the clinical signs of bloat are pretty straightforward. We're going to look at the animal from behind or look at him from the front. The rumen of the animal is where the bloat occurs, and that's located on the left side of its body. And when we think of left side of a calf's body, it's that. It's not us looking the left side of what we're looking at. It is the left ear, the left leg, the left side is where the rumen's located. When we have a 0, we grade bloats 0, 1, 2, and 3. A 0 is no distension on either side of the calf. A bloat score of 1 is starting to get a slight distension on the left side of the animal where the rumen's located. On the right side is just the intestines, the small intestine, large intestine, colon. When we start to get to a bloat score of 2, we'll have severe distension on the left side of the animal, but the right side will be normal. And then when we have the most severe score of bloat of a 3, we will see distension of both sides of the animal, and we'll call it kind of a papal shape. We'll have it rounded on the left side and kind of a pear shape on the right side. So 0 normal, 3 is severe, and when we get a severe, when we talk to people out on wheat pasture research, when you have a calf that has a bloat score of 3, that animal will be chronically affected and have decreased performance the rest of its life. We're going to talk more about bloat. We'll talk about why it happens, how you can treat these animals, what you can do with them after they've had that syndrome. More to come. Thanks for watching DocTalk. See you after these messages. Hey folks, thanks for joining me on today's Cattle First Minute as sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim Vet Medica. You know, when we start to think about breeding season and turning bulls out, the one thing I can't emphasize enough is to get a breeding soundness exam done on your bulls before turnout. And some of the things that can happen during the winter, whether it's frostbite in certain areas of the body or there's things that can happen that will cause a bull to become infertile, are things that you need to make sure. The other thing that's very important on a breeding soundness exam is we have to make sure that we don't have lameness or issues with the feet, because no wheels, no calves. So making sure that we have a sound bull structurally, making sure that we have one that's fertile and one that can produce enough sperm and enough volume with enough motility with no defects in the sperm is vitally important to making sure every year before you turn out to ensure that you get a calf crop, at least from the bull's point of view.
If my calves start healthy and stay healthy, I've got a good shot at making money. That is why I trust Clostrix. It gives my calves the protection they need until their own immune systems kick in.
Calf raisers trust Colostrix colostrum supplements. Colostrix is USDA licensed and proven effective. When your money is on the line, trust Colostrix.
When you're in the cattle business, no matter how much it's a business, it still starts with cattle. It's this basic notion that sits at the core of how we approach things at Boehringer Ingelheim. We understand when you put the cattle first, it just naturally leads to doing the right things. If you want to do well in this business, you start by doing right. Take care of the cattle, and they'll take care of you.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by the new Hired Hand Portable Cow Sprayer. For more information, visit cowsprayer.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here from Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, where I serve as the Jones Professor of Production Medicine and Epidemiology, and we're talking about bloat. And so whether we have animals that are on grain diets or animals that we're kicking out on wheat pasture, we're going to run into bloat. And when we start to think about bloat and the cause of bloat, there are the two syndromes, right? We have frothy bloat on wheat pasture if you have them kicked out on alfalfa, and then we'll have the free gas bloat, which is predominantly the type of bloat that we see when we have animals on grain. So when we're looking at our show cattle or we're looking at cattle that are in feedlots on finish ration, we're talking more about free gas bloat. And when we're talking about the calves kicked out on wheat, we're talking about frothy. Now, the reason why we see this and the risk association with bloat is different for different types of syndromes. So on the frothy bloat, the number one risk factor for frothy bloat on wheat pasture is over-application of fertilizer. In other words, if we over-fertilize or if we put more fertilizer on the wheat pasture than we did the year before, we get more lush growth, and we put the same number of cattle, there's more material out there with the same number of cattle. And so when a storm pattern comes through, cattle are genetically or evolutionarily will go in right before a storm. They see the drop and feel the drop in barometric pressure, and they will consume more before the storm, because then they'll go and they'll hole up or wait until the storm passes and come back out. The ruminant animal can store about 5 to 7 days worth of food supply in the rumen. So in other words, if a calf stops eating today and a storm comes through, it'll take 5 to 7 days before the rumen empties. So they'll go out and they'll consume too much. And I think more times than not, when we see problems with bloat, it has more to do with weather patterns and availability of feed stuff than anything. So when we look at frothy bloats, the first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we're applying the right amount of fertilizer, make sure we have the right amount of growth. If we're going to add fertilizer, we need to add animals to take care of some of those. You can have some preventatives that we're going to talk about as well. On free gas bloats, this is a sequela or a sequel to something that happened before. In most bloats, prior to bloat occurring in the animal, we will see an increase in grain overload, which will cause acidosis. Acidosis will cause the reduction in the pH in the rumen from them overtraining on the grain. That will decrease or change the rumen microbes, which will then lead to more acid production in the rumen, which knocks out the stretch receptors and doesn't allow that animal to eructate or release the gas. The other thing that can happen with bloat in a feedlot pen, so it's really important that you understand where the animals are located, is what we call overbalance. And the term overbalance could be a mound that's too steep, and we've seen cattle, they'll get their feet uphill and then they can't stand up. So you have to roll them over so that their feet are downhill and they can stand up. If a calf gets its feet uphill and it's laying down, or if it's laying in an indention, the gas bubble will actually move to the ventral side, or to the side where the animal then can't belch. And if they can't get up, they'll actually continue to increase gas production in the rumen, not be able to eructate, and so we see some things to that nature. When we come back, we're going to talk about how to treat free gas and frothy bloat. You're watching DocTalk. Thanks for joining us. More after these messages.
When looking at the number of farm and ranch operations, the USDA Census of Agriculture says cattle and beef production is the largest single segment of American agriculture. The census also says the average age of the American cattle farmer or rancher is in the late 50s. In order to support the continuous supply of U.S. beef, these producers need to do some business planning to successfully transfer their cattle operations to younger, independent producers.
I'm Andy Biergo. I'm owner of Biergo Angus Farms with two of my sons, Bryson and Drew. We've been in business since 1950, and a family farm's been around for 145 years. And we've, like everybody, we've been through some good times and bad times. And doing well and having things that protect you and go forward, the beef checkoff could be one of the things that makes us global. We go to protect ourselves and protect our trading ability, and one way or another, we're going to have people that will protect us and do that. I've always had this theory that you're either doing things to advance and do better. I've never been a believer in this, it'll be normal or average. I'm a firm believer that we'll be going one way or the other. And without protection and advertisement and teaching people to believe in what we produce, it's more about producing the consumer. That's our client than maybe it is proving it to ourselves.
For me, one of the most important aspects that the beef checkoff provides is sustainability for future generations. My brother and I both have daughters, that we can see a future in the life that our grandfather has lived, that our father has lived, and now that we are getting to be a part of, and also the opportunities out there for our daughters now.
It was my dream when I was a little boy to own the home 80 acres, and I've always told my sons that you either need a job well enough, you can have hobbies or do what you want, or you need to have a passion for your job and what you do. And I've had a passion for cattle my whole life, and my sons have a true passion for it, and I'm very proud of how they handle the farms.
The beef checkoffs has given us a lot of different opportunities for our daughters to have a chance to come back and be a part of this in the future.
It's easy to spot the man who uses Synanthic. With lower volume and less waste, Synanthic steps up your deworming routine. Get more deworming with less dewormer at Synanthic.com.
When it comes to stopping horn flies, cattlemen love their Vet Gun. Today they love it even more because Vet Gun now has a 1-2 punch with 2 VetCap insecticides. New AIM-A abamectin can be used in rotation with AIM-L for effective in-season control. Each delivers a unique mode of action to manage hornfly resistance. So start your in-season rotation program with AIM-L and new AIM-A abamectin VetCaps from AgriLabs.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, Dr. Dan here from DocTalk. Thanks for joining me today. We're talking about bloat in cattle, and it's something that occurs commonly, and we're going to talk about treatment of bloat now. So if we have cattle out on wheat pasture and you pull in, and here's one that's a bloat score 1. A bloat score 1 is a minor bloat. It's just a puffiness on the left side of the body, and so those animals are probably not going to treat. But once I get to the bloat score 2 with severe distension on the left side and definitely a bloat score 3, those animals need to be pulled in and we need to treat them. You can be assured that most cattle on wheat pasture are going to be of the frothy bloat variety. Therefore, when we treat them, and the best way to find out if they're frothy bloat or free gas is to pass an orogastric tube. So we'll take an orogastric tube or a stomach tube, and the first thing you want to do is put a speculum in the mouth of the steer. Because if you don't and you pass a rubber tube, those molars on the back side of that cow's mouth or that steer's mouth will chew that tube in half. And that's not a good thing to have happen, because when you pass that tube halfway down, the calf chews the orogastric tube off, you're going to wind up with half the tube in the rumen and the other half in your hand. Not a good situation. So have a metal or plastic speculum that you're going to pass that'll guard that tube from being chewed in two. You're going to pass the tube, and then you'll want to blow on the tube a couple of times to get feed stuff out away from the end of the tube, and you'll know pretty quick then whether you have a frothy bloat or free gas. If you have free gas, you'll actually have gas coming out. You'll see the sides starting to not be as distended. If it's frothy, you'll actually have the froth come up the tube. If it is frothy bloat, leave the orogastric tube in. Have your TheraBloat, which is paloxylene. Paloxylene will come in a 1 ounce treatment vial, and you will take that and mix that with a pint of water, and then you'll pass that 1 ounce of TheraBloat in the pint of water into the rumen. You can add more water if you want. It'll disperse evenly, and what that does is that starts to break that surface tension of the froth and will help that animal decrease the frothy bloat. Sometimes you have to retreat these animals. Sometimes they become chronic frothy bloaters, and those animals need to be railed. If it's a free gas bloat, when you pass the orogastric tube, you will start to get the gas to come out, okay? Now, my rules on treatment of calves with free gas bloat, because we'll see these as repeat customers as well, is that I will treat them, I have the 3 strikes and they're out rule. I will let them down, let the gas down 3 times. On the 3rd time, I'm gonna make a decision. Either I'm gonna put a fistula in the side of the animal, which is an actual open hole from the rumen outside the side of the animal. We can stitch the rumen wall to the hide of the calf, and he can let free gas go out continuously, and that will take about 6 months to a year to close. Or I'm going to rail that animal or sell it for salvage slaughter. It's the 1 or 2 things, because if they continuously come in, you're going to wind up having that, and the animal's either going to wind up dying or from bloat, or you're going to wind up continuously having to treat them to let them down. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about emergency treatment of bloat on your farm with your cattle, which is really important to understand and know. Thanks for watching DocTalk. Thanks for being with us today. More about bloat and emergency treatment when we come back after these messages.
When it comes to stopping horn flies, cattlemen love their vet gun. Today they love it even more because Vet Gun now has a 1-2 punch with 2 VetCap insecticides. New AIM-A abamectin can be used in rotation with AIM-L for effective in-season control. Each delivers a unique mode of action to manage hornfly resistance. So start your in-season rotation program with AIM-L and new AIM-A abamectin vet caps from AgriLabs.
Some call it a come-from-behind victory, an unlikely win, a reversal of fortune, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. This is our moment, our victory dance, because we choose confidence. We choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ask your veterinarian to prescribe Zuprevo. Zuprevo is a fast-acting, long-lasting BRD treatment that you can count on to get the job done. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo from Merck Animal Health.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to Doc Talk. Dr. Dan Thompson here. We're talking about bloat in cattle. So now you walk out to the pen and you have a steer that's severely distended. This calf is a bloat score 3. It's distended, round on the left side, pear shape on the right side, and it's not functioning appropriately. So we're in an emergency situation when this happens. The first thing that you're going to want to do is remember that the rumen is on the left side of the animal, not the right side of the animal. So if we're going to do an emergency treatment of that animal in the pen, we're going to puncture the animal through the paralumbar fossa, or through the left side, as you can see in this picture, high on the left side at the apex of where that rumen is distended. So when we do this, we want to make sure that we use something that's extremely sharp. If you puncture the animal on the right side of its body, you're not going to hit the rumen, you're not going to hit where the gas is, you're going to actually hit intestines. So make sure on the left side of the body, okay? The first thing you have to understand is do not let the animal lay down. An animal that's severely bloated that lays down and then you go to the house to find a pocket knife or a bloat needle, that animal will die from suffocation before you get back to it. Once they lay down and they're super distended, the animal's not going to make it. So this is an emergency situation. So you can have a bloat needle, and I suggest to a lot of people that own feed yards or that are feeding cattle to have a bloat needle on their person. And the bloat needle is in this picture here, and you can see that there is a trocar and a stylus that goes down through it. This is extremely sharp. And you can puncture that animal on the left side, pull the stylus out, and you have that trocar that's going through, that's allowing the release of the pressure, and that animal will immediately have relief. We have emergency trocars that you can use that will create a fistula in the side of that animal, and these actually, you can see from this picture, you puncture and then you screw, and it'll actually screw that rumen wall and screw the outside hide in that paralumbar fossa together, and will give you a couple of days to take that animal for salvage slaughter. The other thing, the last resort, is if you see the animal and you need to use a pocket knife or something to that nature, you can. Now, 2 things to understand about this. Number 1, there's a reason why they make footballs out of cowhide. It's tough. So you need a sharp knife. And 2, you do not want to have a jackknife that has a flexible blade. Make sure you have something that's a lock blade or something that is solid handle to the knife. I have used a pocket knife once to puncture, and that thing came shut on my fingers. Do not use a Bowie knife, okay? There is some anatomy on the left side of that animal, and you will cause some damage. So a short 4 to 6 inch blade, lock blade for your safety if you're going to use that to puncture an animal. Never let an animal with bloat lay down. Emergency situation, have the proper tools in place. You can work with your veterinarian. He'll have those tools, or she will have those tools at her clinic, and then you can utilize them on your farm or ranch. Thanks for watching the show today. Remember, if you want to find us on the web, you can go to www.doctalktv.com. Always work with your local veterinarian. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here from DocTalk. Thanks for watching us, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Vet Gun with Amel and new AMA Abamectin Vet Caps, the 1-2 punch against hornfly resistance. From AgriLabs.
For more information about this program or previous programs, go to DocTalkTV.com.
DocTalk was brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.